All right, welcome back, guys. We got another Pocket Change market report. This is your kind of like one-stop resource to find out what's valuable in your change today. It's a great place to go to. We take a look at the last 24 to 48 hours of realized eBay sales, so that way you guys exactly know what your coins can be worth. Now, this particular report is for January 18, 2024. It's a Thursday, so we got a Thursday drop here for you. And like I mentioned in a lot of other PCMR videos, we focus primarily on coins that are not graded. Grading doesn't necessarily enhance the value of any of these coins. The idea is that you find them in change today, you turn around, you take good pictures, you throw them up on eBay, and set yourself up for what could possibly be a pretty nice little payday from these coins that otherwise you had paid face value or a reduced price for. So it's one of the favorites in the community. I get a lot of people that they yearn for the PCMR each and every single week, and I'm glad I'm able to deliver. All right, and we have 25 listings here today to talk about. It should be a great show. And, I want to thank each and every single one of you for all your views and support through all of these years. We are closing in, I think, on about 5 years or so that we've been doing the PCMR here on Blue Ridge Silverhound. So we're going to continue that tradition with more of the good stuff. And, the place to go to these days is at the bank. Go to the bank. Find these coins in bankrolls. It's really simple enough. And then, take good photos and sell them. Again, we don't talk about graded coins. All of the images you see here today are 100% original to these listings. We didn't juice or doctor any of them to make them look better. So, glad to have you guys here. We do have a quick little PSA. We have a Whatnot stream coming up tomorrow, December 19th on Friday, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Speaking of the devil, we're going to be giving away 2 copies of the Cherry Picker's Guide to Rare Die Varieties. This is the brand new 6th edition volume 2. And you might have a chance to win one of 2 copies of this book. But in addition, we'll also have 2 copies of the Strike It Rich with Pocket Change books as well. 4 banging giveaways. And of course, we're going to have a nice little auction as well. So come on down, have a good time. Sign up for the platform if you haven't done so already. I have my referral link down below where you could grab yourself some store credit to use if you sign up under me. But yeah, let's go ahead and crank with the sales here from the last day or two. All right, it's always good to kind of kick off these videos with coins that made a very little small statement when they first came out. While, in the beginning, they were pretty neat and everybody was wondering, whoa, could there be something bigger, something more from this particular era? And they just kind of withered away. But are they completely worthless? Well, I'm glad to say no, not quite. There are examples that sell for a decent little chunk of change. So what are we talking about here? This is the 2023P Bessie Coleman American Women Quarter. Okay, it shows Bessie Coleman on the reverse, along with that biplane in the background, and that plane has been the subject of a lot of neat finds these days. Again, when you look at the plane here, look at the top part of the wing, you're going to see a little bit of a die chip. All right, a piece of the die had fractured and had broken off the die, thereby creating a little bit of a cavity. And when these coins are struck, all that metal flow goes into that spot. Same way with the cut. So this is something that we're all way too familiar with. Come in different shapes and sizes and progressions. And I'm glad to say that these are not worthless. All right, this particular example ended up selling for $9.98. Considering that it was sold as a buy it now listing, that's probably your best bet to maximize your profits here. Keeping in mind that, again, face value is just a quarter. And when you could do 40 times face value for something like this, that's pretty cool. And the die chips actually get bigger, big to the point where they actually connect to the word unum in E pluribus unum. Those are incredible. They actually, you can actually see them with their naked eye. And, you know, again, it's not nothing. These are certainly worth keeping aside. And while it's not like a big dollar coin, all the money goes into the same pot, but you sell enough of these, it's end up, you know, really making an impact on your seed money. The next one that we have here, and very, very seldom do we see these in nice condition. This is a 1982p Kennedy half dollar. The big one to look out for here, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be the missing FG initials that are normally found on the reverse, right in this area here between the tail feathers and the wing, or the leg that's holding all the arrows there. On the eagle, so you can see this one right here, missing the initials. At one point, it was, the dies were over abraded in that area or over polished to where the initials for Frank Gasparo eventually disappeared. You can find these on a few number of dates, but the 82p that you see here is one of just a couple that's recognized in the Cherry Picker's Guide variety, and that's very meaningful because it's got its own FS number, which is a catalog number for this variety. And the big grading companies will grade this as the variety because it is from the Cherry Picker's Guide. And judging from the looks of this one, this is kind of like a nice medium mint-state grade coin, like a 63, 64 grade. And you just don't see a lot of those for this date. This one right here, ladies and gents, sold for $36.51 with 9 total bids. So that's a nice little payday on that nugget there. That's worth way more than the silver that you would normally be hunting for in these boxes. We got a pretty neat little presentation here, 2023 Lincoln Shield set. This is, of course, the Extra V variety. Here we are, you know, close to 3/4 of the way into January, and the Extra V coins are still being talked about. All right, so this particular coin right here is pursued in raw condition and then sent out to the grading companies because PCGS, NGC, and Annex, they all grade this with the Extra V attribution on there. And then a coin that normally you would spend $30 to $50 to buy, grade it, get it back, sell it. And these things sell for hundreds of dollars. A Mid-State 66 example just sold for $395 here in the last 24 hours. So, and that's kind of like a medium grade for a lot of these. So definitely do take that into consideration. It could be, with a little bit of work, a great way to make some extra money. In case you need a little bit of a refresher, there's a little V notch next to Victor David Brenner's initials at the base of Lincoln's bust, and that is ultimately what we're looking for. Here's also a 1987 Lincoln set. Man, I haven't seen one of these in a while. There is a tiny little cud on the reverse of this coin. You guys probably already see it, but check out the condition of the coin. It's actually okay, you know. Nice little red-brown. I would say it's like a low-end mid-state coin. And one that, you know, after looking at it, is easy to miss. This is one that that a lot of people, honestly, you know, they'll toss it out, you know, before they even notice it. But there you go, right there, the R in America. Nice little die break right there. It's a cud, so the actual piece of the die had fallen out. This one right here sold for $19.13. I mean, again, that's pretty good for a very small, tiny little cud. Cuds are kings of the error world today, and they command the most amount of money for what you find. And size really does matter. So the bigger the cud, the more money that people will throw at you just so they could own it. We do have a couple pieces of currency here today. This is actually a cool one. This is a 1995 $1 bill. All right, so it's got a little age on it as far as its date, but you know, you can find these quite a bit if you you know, use the good old eagle eye to look at all parts of the bill. Now, the front of the bill looks normal on this one, but when you flip it over, oh boy, we have a insufficient ink error is what it's called. So the wells had red ink. It's real simple. That supplies to the printing plates. This particular one sold for $103.13. Some will look at this and say, well, I should just grade it. Well, again, it's going to sell for right around this amount of money. If you had spent the $30, $40 to submit it, that's money that you take out of your own pocket by doing that, where you could just simply sell it raw and command a full market for it. Grading, again, doesn't guarantee extra value to anything here in the errors and varieties realm. And pretty cool to see on a 90% silver dollar here. This is a 1923S piece dollar. And it doesn't look, particularly, it doesn't look dramatic or anything, but there is a little bit of a strike through on this one. You can see it on the obverse. There's a little ring of what was suspected to be a little bit of grease that was on the periphery of the coin that's near the rim. So you can see a couple of the letters in God We Trust, Liberty, the date, very weak strike because of the extra grease that was on that die. This one sold for $54, considering that, you could probably cherry pick this out of a bulk scrap bin of a piece of Morgan dollars. It's the little things that do count. You spend $28 for this coin at a coin shop, turn around and flip it for $54. Again, those are the little things that do matter. If you can recognize that, you can take advantage of this opportunity to resell at the next kind of higher level. And we don't typically feature seeded material, all right? But it's always good to see one when it's relevant. 1891 Philadelphia seeded Liberty dime is actually in great shape. I would dare say this is probably an XF40. If it's cleaned or not remains to be seen. The photos aren't really great to represent whether or not it's an original coin or one that's been cleaned. But there's a lot of neat things that went on during the 19th century. Just how the dies were prepped, knowing that the dates in the digit were hand punched individually. So there's a lot of room for error there as well. So when we look here closely, the date looks normal, but when you look at the denticles under the date, that's the little teeth going around the rim, you're going to see what looks to be the top of a digit, whether it's an 8 or 9. See that semicircle there? So what mint employees used to do to kind of test out the hardness of the dies and specific strikes is that they will... they'll stamp a digit of the date somewhere in a crowded part of the die. So that's usually the denticles or in the actual design, like the base of Liberty's kind of like drapery right there is another crowded area that they'll try out the stamping of these digits. And, it's something that was a pretty normal practice back in the day, up until the turn of the century. Then they stopped doing that because they just designed the date as part of the hubs. So, it was a different time for sure. But that is pretty neat. It's probably some kind of like offhanded green variety. I don't think it's in the Cherry Picker's Guide from what I can remember. But nonetheless, that's really cool to see. This one sold for $95.03. Again, it's the little things that count. You can find things like this on Indian head cents, other seeded coinage, and things like that. Alright guys, this one is quite small and minor, and someone had actually torn the butterfly fold from the corner. So the butterfly fold had an extra extension, a little bit of a fold over, just like a corner of sheet fold, that was printed over. All right, you can see that very clearly here, but at the same time, yeah, the piece is missing. Someone had torn it off or cut it with scissors or something like that, which is unfortunate. That really diminishes the value on something like this. This one ended up selling for $58.98. If the piece was still on there, it'd probably sell for $75 to $100. So if you do come across like foldovers or butterfly folds, do not remove them at all. you got to keep them on there so that way they're worth more. Here's a 1965 Roosevelt dime. Really easy here. This is just a straight clip. All right, even has a little bit of Blakesley effect on the opposite side of the clip on the other rim there, which is a flattening of that rim. But yeah, pretty neat. Nice first year copper nickel clad error. It looks very attractive. Got a little bit of circulation wear. This one sold for $12.50, and that's with 2 bids. And here's a 1999 Lincoln Memorial Set. This is actually a very common date to find broad struck and off-center strike coins. Both events happening outside of the collar. So if the collar malfunctions, and that's the device that keeps the coin in the striking chamber during the process, then the metal flow will continue to kind of go outwards. It's like squeezing your finger in a ball of Play-Doh. All that material goes outwards. It really changes the overall shape of the item that's being struck. So this one, right, you can see it's just a really beautiful centered broad strike. It appears like Lincoln has a double profile, but that's very common because with the stretching of that metal, and considering that these are copper plated, that plating fractures really easily with things like this. And you can even see it on the reverse as well on the Lincoln Memorial. Here's a little bit of a comparison side by side, showing the size difference of our broad struck error to a standard non-error Lincoln set. So this one right here sold for $30.38. And this is an anomaly that we normally see on 1955 Lincoln wheat sets, but you can also find it on a 53. So we're all familiar with something called the poor man's doubled die. In 1955, the Mint had produced some pretty remarkable doubled dies. The FS101 is the biggest of them all, even today. But there are examples where it shows some pretty strong die deterioration, doubling, which, they kind of go piggyback off of the FS101 in terms of kind of like, kind of how it looks. But there's really no comparison there. So 55s are normally the date that everybody associates with a poor man's doubled die, but they also find it on the 53s as well. You can see that extra kind of like 3 there. Again, that's all die deterioration. It's not really a hub doubled event. And even these have a little bit of a fan base as well. This one ended up selling for $8.45, which seems crazy just for a regular run-of-the-mill 53. And this is not another, and there have been a few, exquisite 2000 Philadelphia Sacagawea dollar. This one is the well-known Wounded Eagle Reverse, also the FS901 in the Cherry Picker's Guide. If you see right here in the breast area of the eagle, it goes into the wing, you can see like a raised line. All right, that's a die gouge. Something had fallen on that die, or maybe a Mint employee inadvertently scraped it with something, a tool, but there's a couple of lines right there that are raised. All right, they're not incused. These did not take a hit. And these are quite desirable. A lot of them that I do find online that people have sold, typically in that $50 to $75 range, but much nicer ones like this command a little bit more. This one right here is sold for $114.99. All right, note the red background on the next set of coins. These were all sold by a seller by the name of Cayman Coins, C-A-I-M-A-N Coins. I believe that's how it's spelled. Cayman. If I screwed up, I apologize, buddy. But Cayman had a number of really nice error coins that had popped up here in the last day or so. We're going to talk about most of them. Here's a 1998 P Washington quarter. This one is slightly off center, as you can see. Nothing too major, but it's worth noting because the condition is actually really nice as well. This one sold for $20.50 with 9 bids. Here is also a 1987, another Philadelphia minted coin. Again, another off-center strike, this time probably about 8 to 10% off center. Nothing too dramatic, but this is a much tougher date of an off center strike for those that are collecting these by date. This particular one right here sold for $37 this time with 18 bids. And we also have a 1981P. Again, a date that we don't see quite that often, but it's worth mentioning this one because it did show up in public auction. This one is off center. I would say like 10-12%, a little bit better than the previous coin. And this one sold for $20.50 with 11 bids. This one is more like a low end, about uncirculated coin, plus it does have a scratch there on the reverse. And this one is quite neat. It's a 1973 Washington quarter with a little squiggly line there on the obverse, which ironically is a strike through. It could be a bristle, or it could be a wire bristle. It could be a regular type of bristle, like a synthetic or horsehair bristle. That was on the working die, and it was struck through onto the coin. So it's going to show like this. This is not damaged because if you look at the anomaly, it's got no buildup on either side of that squiggly line. All right. Whereas if you scraped a tool against it, whatever it may be, a nail head or something to that effect, you're going to get the buildup of the material on both sides of that anomaly. So this one right here, believe it or not, one of the big bargains of the week at $14.61 with 10 bids. I figured something like this would be worth about $30 to $40, as most interesting strike throughs are. And this one's also pretty crazy, but at the same time, the coin is defaced, so it does have some issues. It's a 1960s copper nickel clad era Washington quarter that is not only broad struck, but also exhibits a pretty nice clip as well. But you can see all those scrape marks on the obverse. Could have been done by someone that's interested to know if it was, genuine or not, which is a practice that a lot of people did when they found these in circulation. So this one right here sold still for $45 with 16 bids in spite of that damage. Here's a 1994P Roosevelt dime. I'm going to consider this more of kind of like a strike through grease and debris on that reverse there. Because we have a relatively strong obverse strike here. I thought, maybe it could possibly be a tapered planchet. But, we do have some relatively good rims even on the reverse. It's just a lot of strike through. There was a lot of grease on that reverse die before this one was even struck. So even with that being said, it sold for $12.50 with 9 bids. Just some really big coins coming out of circulation these days. Here's a 1983P Roosevelt dime. This one looks to be off-center, but it's not. It's a misaligned die error. You can see the obverse is off-center, but the reverse is perfectly centered. So that's all you need to know. As long as one side is perfectly centered and the other is not, that's a misaligned die issue. And this one sold for $15.50 with 7 bids. One of the cooler ones this week is actually a 19 teens. This is from the teens, Mercury dime. It's in really nice shape, but there's something going on the obverse, and this is going to throw a lot of people off into thinking that this is damaged, but it's not. When we look up close here, you can see quite a bit amount of strike through. It could be grease with metal shavings and various other dirt and debris bits, all mixed in on the dies. The scrapes that you see there above Adolph Wyman's initials are simply just die scratches as a result of cleaning up possibly a clash or something else that had happened onto that working die. So this one right here, pretty nice sale at $53.50, and that's with 20 bids. Here's a 1988 Lincoln Memorial cent that's off center by about 20%. Quite nice. It's a nice, I would say, probably full red. You have some devices that are cut off on both sides of the coin, but still maintaining a lot of the attractiveness of one of the dates that you need to look out for if you're collecting these by date. This one sold for $29 with 16 bids. We also have this 1988 Lincoln Memorial. This one is double struck, but it flipped over the second time around because you have the strike of the obverse that's off center on the reverse side of the coin. So you do, it's a uniface as well, which means that there were two coins that were overlapping each other out of collar in the striking chamber. Please do note that there is some damage on the obverse of the coin as well. So something like this ended up selling for $50 with 16 bids, so that's quite nice. Here's a large date 1982 copper. This one has slightly broad struck. It's an indent with a little bit of a partial brockage in there. So there was another coin that was already struck overlapping this one. And both coins were struck simultaneously, completely off center from each other. And this particular one sold for $31. That's with 10 bids. Nice little dual error here. Quick little piece of paper in here. This is the last one on the week as far as paper money is concerned. Yeah, check out the overprint. It's slightly misaligned to the left. You can see some of the overprint elements shifted and overlapping the base print of the front of this note. It's a 1985 series, so that's a $1 bill. The back of the note showing a perfectly centered reverse, along with some of the soiling to give it a nice accurate grade. I would say VF30, VF25-ish level for this one. And it sold for $43.79 with 22 bids. And finally, the last coin for the week is this beautiful 1970D. All right, quick little check-in with you guys. Is this an off-center error or is it a misaligned die? And if you chose misaligned die, you are 100% correct. Nice centered reverse. The front of the coin is off-center, probably by about 10%. And how this works is that the one obverse die has a lot of play to it, all right? And it's more of a wear and tear thing. Like, you know, screws become loose all the time. Like driving an automobile, things begin to kind of like, you know, loosen up and break apart. And again, it's good old-fashioned wear and tear here. That obverse die just needed to be tightened up, but when it does strike coins, they look like this, and it's a pretty cool looking effect. This one does have a pretty big sized carbon spot on the obverse, as you can see. But even with that being said, due to the rarity of this and the date, it sold for $78.99 with 17 bids. Wow, I mean, who would have thought? So that's it for the PCMR stuff for this week. This video is for entertainment purposes only. This is not financial advice. Please do collect and grade responsibly. And final little point, thank you guys for tuning in on this video. I'm your host, Sean, with Blue Ridge Silverhound. I hope you guys liked the video. If you do so, please show your support and hit that like button. Feel free to share the video and subscribe if you haven't done so already. All of that extra support will go a long way in ensuring that I produce some pretty nice quality content for you in the future. So that's going to go ahead and wrap things up. You guys take care. Happy hunting, and I hope to hear about your big scores here in the near future. Take care and farewell.